Hello, my awesome third grade artist. Today we're starting a new project. We are going to be creating these watercolor resist pumpkins. And we have done watercolor resist before, so that's where we draw with something like oil pastel or crayon, and then we paint over it with watercolor, and the watercolor resist all those waxy places where the oil pastel or crayons have been drawn and colored in. This time, though, we're going to be using just black watercolor. And what's going to happen is it's going to give us these really cool lines around all of our shapes. And then we're going to have a little bit of the black that shows up on top of it, and it just gives a really neat effect. So these are going to be really pretty. And before we start this lesson, teachers, have your students watch the YouTube video, A Pumpkin Grows, for just a little background on how a pumpkin does grow. They're really cool plants. And then we're going to start drawing. Okay, so to begin with, you are going to give your students a piece of this 11 by 14 watercolor paper and make sure that their name label is attached to the back. And then teachers, I have given you this picture that has 4 different representations of pumpkins on there. So students can look at these. I'm going to draw my version, but students, you can draw your version of a pumpkin. Yours doesn't have to look exactly like mine. So you may want to put this up on your Elmo so it can project onto your TV so the students can look at this, or you can find something similar to this on your TV and just pause it and have it up there for the kids to look at. All right, so to begin with, we are going to be drawing with a pencil. So I'm going to try to draw dark so you can see it, but you don't need to draw as dark as I am. Remember, when we begin drawing with a pencil, we always try to just draw lightly because we don't want those lines to show later. All right, so to begin with our pumpkin, I'm going to make an oblong shape in the middle. So we start with the middle of the pumpkin. So you see how I'm kind of using my finger to trace this out. I want to leave a little room at the top for the stem, and I want to leave a little room at the bottom for the ground and the leaves that I'm going to create. So you start by just making an oblong shape, a big long oval shape, you see. I'm drawing dark. Remember, you don't need to draw as dark as I'm drawing. And then for the sides of our pumpkins, we can just come out with these half oblong shapes. They kind of look like a C, kind of like the letter C. And they create a little bump at the top and the bottom. Let's do one on this side. See how it's starting to look like a pumpkin? And let's do one more to make it a big fat pumpkin. This pumpkin is ready for picking. Do you like to go to the pumpkin patch and get a pumpkin? Have you ever done that before? Maybe with your parents or your friends or your school? Then I'm going to draw the stem. So I had my stem kind of just curling and winding off the paper because remember, a pumpkin grows on a vine. So if you've ever been to the pumpkin patch, you know that they are just these long plants that are connected by vines, and you just cut yours off. So mine's still going to be on the vine. You may want to have yours like this, where it's already been cut from the vine and it has a stem, but mine's going to be still on the vine. And I'm going to come up with one side, and I'm going to have a loop in it, a loop-de-loop like that, and it's going to go off the page. But now I have to make the other side. So I'm going to come here, and I'm just going to go around. It goes under that, and then we'll just color over that. That would be overlapped. My eraser is not very good, so this you wouldn't see, but we'll just color over that later. Okay, and then I need something over here, so I may just put a big leaf, kind of like that. Then I'm going to make some big leaf shapes at the bottom, like it's sitting on a bed of leaves. So I'm just going to start by creating these leaf shapes with a middle vein in the leaf. Yours doesn't have to look just like mine, remember. Some of the leaves overlap, so you don't see all of the leaves. See parts of the leaf where they are overlapping. And I think I need one more. Smaller one back here on each side. Okay. That's just going to give it a beautiful green bed of leaves that this pumpkin is sitting in. Okay, now we're going to make our horizon line. The horizon line is where the sky meets the ground. So I'm going to come up. It needs to go kind of behind where my leaves are. I'm going to make just a straight line. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. Yours might be curvy. Your horizon line can be whatever shape you want. Then I'm going to draw some clouds in the sky so I have something going on in my background. And maybe a sun that's just peeking out. You can make yours however you want. And maybe I'm going to put a cloud over here. So you get your drawing how you like it. Try to fill your page. You have a big pumpkin. You don't have a lot of just blank empty space. Then you are going to take a light colored piece of chalk. So you can use, I'm using yellow, you can use yellow, white, like a light green. And we are going to outline all of our pencil lines. Because what's going to happen later is when we paint that black watercolor over, it's going to make this disappear and it'll fill in those spaces with black. So I'm just going to start outlining, going right on top of all of my pencil lines. It's going to be best if you use a color that you can see. You could use white, but you may not be able to see it good. And later we've got to go back and color this with oil pastels. So you see that I am just outlining everything. Every line that I made, I am outlining. Now, I am going to stop at that little part that overlaps. I'm not going to make that line that goes in the middle because I want that to be covered up. So, see, I stop there and go. Okay. A good thick line is what you want because it'll help create that black outline later. All right, I'm not going to go in and outline all of mine just for time reasons, but you would outline everything, even your horizon line, even your clouds. Everything's going to be outlined. Then you're going to use your oil pastels to go in and color your entire picture. So I'm going to start with my pumpkin, and you're going to use blending with your oil pastels. That's very important, and it really makes these look good. So I'm going to start. I have just a really small orange here. And I'm going to start staying inside of those lines. Do not color over your chalk. You want to leave those because if you color over them, you're not going to have your black lines later. So that's really important. And teachers, you need to walk around and make sure that those students are not coloring over those chalk lines. They're leaving them. And so I'm just going to start by outlining the shape. And then I would go in and start coloring it. Now we're going to blend colors. We're going to layer colors because you still see that I've got a lot of white showing through here, and that would all turn really black later on. So we're just going to remember to layer our colors. I'm starting out by just putting down a base layer of orange. And then we can make this pumpkin have form. That's where it looks three-dimensional by how we layer our colors. I'm trying to not shake the camera, but I think that's happening. Okay, so I've just got a base layer there. Now I'm going to find a darker orange. So you see I have this, and I'm going to start going just right over some of those areas. And be making the outer edges darker because it would have more shadow in that area. And it would be a little darker. We're making this look round. We're making it have form. Okay. Now I'm going to come in with a lighter color, maybe even some yellow. Now look, that yellow has got green on it because someone used it and it got green on it. So all you do is take a paper towel and wipe that off. Easy peasy. I don't want to get the green in there. And then I just go in right over everything and start adding my yellow. And that creates like a yellowy orange color. See how pretty that's looking? and I'm getting it really colored in. I'm losing all those white spaces. So you'll need to, you know, do work on this over several weeks. It's really important that you do a good job getting your oil pastel colors really good and vibrant on here, because teachers really, if you don't have them do this layering process, you're going to end up with just like a solid black drawing, because they've got to have lots of thick oil pastel on there. You can even come in the middle. See how I've got a white, and I can lighten that up even further by adding some white. That's what's so cool about oil pastels. You can just layer them and create lots of really neat effects. All right, I'm going to do one more section on this pumpkin, and then I'll show you the watercolor part. So I'm going to start again. I think I'm going to go in this time with that darker orange, because as you get more around the side of your pumpkin, it's going to get darker. This is going to be your lightest side. The most sun would be hitting that front side. Again, I'm not coloring over my chalk lines. I'm leaving my chalk lines. Teachers walk around, observe the students, and make sure they're following that important direction. And I'm going to come in again with some orange. The edges need to be darker, getting lighter as you get to the center of the shape. And then I may take this, there's a pale yellow, kind of come in, blend that in. It makes a really pretty color. Okay, let me do this side again. So I'm going to do the same thing. It's symmetrical. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Outline your shape first. You see how I'm kind of outlining and coloring at the same time? Being careful to not color over my chalk lines. I'm going to get my orange. My orange is getting really teeny tiny here, but you can see that you can work with these oil pastels until they're really teeny tiny. And I'm going to take that pastel yellow that I was using. Always remember to check your oil pastel that it doesn't have color you don't want, and wipe it with a paper towel. And then I just kind of gently get those little pieces that have broken off there. Okay, so you will do your entire picture, you will color it. So you see I've come down here, and I've used different shades of green to make my leaves. I didn't use all the same green, so that's important. That looks good. And then I used a sandy brown color. I think it was, you don't have to use this color, but I think it was this color of my oil pastels. And that's the color that I used to get that dirt color, because it's growing in a garden, remember, so there's probably not going to be a lot of grass there. And then I made a blue sky, and I made my clouds white. You don't want to just leave it white. On the clouds, you will color in white oil pastels. If you don't, it'll just leave a big black spot. All right, then teachers, you will have to prepare these little cups, and they have some black watercolor diluted with a little bit of water. So I put about 3/4 amount of black watercolor and about 1/4 amount of water in there. So it's not just solid black. And I'm gonna walk over here and get a paintbrush. This is a big piece of paper, so you want a fairly good sized brush. And I'm not going to paint over the whole thing, but I'm just going to paint over this part that I colored. You will wait until they're completely finished and let them paint over it. And I'm just going to start painting over it. And you see how your chalk lines disappear and the black fills that in. And it's going to kind of puddle up. That's okay. You can just let them dry. And it's okay to have these little spots on your piece of art. See how it's making on the oil pastels? That looks really neat when it's dry. So it's really cool. So you see how I'm just going in here and I'm losing that chalk, and it's making a really neat outline on my watercolor. So if like I was telling you earlier, if you don't color in those clouds white and you paint over with the black, that's what's going to happen. You're going to lose your clouds. So make sure everywhere you have painted in with your, or colored in with your oil pastel. And yours should look something like this when you're finished. You'll need to make sure you let it dry completely so all the places on the oil pastel will dry. And then your teacher will send these back to me and I will put them on Artsonia, and I may save some for the art show. So try really hard to do a good job and be neat and follow directions, and I will see you next time. Bye.